Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Scott Taylor Sharp and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos and fired up. You're here with us for our final show of 2024. Up your Christmas time away and your travels have been good. Gearing up for New Year's celebration tomorrow and some LSU football. We'll certainly talk about that over the next couple of hours. Got to talk about the Saints as well. My final pick for LSU and Baylor in the bowl game. We'll talk some Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, as they're really fun to talk about right now. And the college football playoff cranks up in earnest tomorrow with the quarterfinals. I want to preview all of those games, so we will do so over the next couple of hours. Appreciate you making us part of your day. We start each and every day the same day, and as always with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Every car on the lot online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. New Orleans Saints yesterday took the field in the Superdome, and it was matched up with two bad football teams, two injured football teams, two teams with nothing really to play for other than pride and future job security. And the Saints went out there and got their butts kicked. I don't know another way to put it. A 3-win Raiders team with Aiden McConnell at quarterback and Amir Abdullah, who they basically got off the street running the football. They came in and just pushed the Saints around all over the football field. Spencer Rattler did some things well in the first half. He did almost nothing well in the second half. You got off to a reasonable start. You get a Brian Brzee sack on the first drive to force a punt. Well, Carl Granderson's offsides. They go down and get points, and you never really recovered from there. It was a humiliating loss for New Orleans if you're paying attention. I'm sure no one in the country was paying attention. There are no playoff implications. There are no players on either team that you really want to watch, even in a losing effort. It's not a game that caught national headlines or even attention at all. But certainly here in South Louisiana, it did catch our attention, and it's embarrassing for the Saints to go out there and put a performance like that on the field. When you lose 7 games in a row in a season, you realize that that season is, for all intents and purposes, over, even in a terrible NFC South. And you fire the coach, which is the right thing to do. And it took a humiliating defeat against Carolina to fire the coach. We've now learned that Mickey Loomis did not want to fire the coach, but they did. They fired the coach after you lost to South Carolina. Might as well have been South Carolina, to Carolina, and you lose 7 straight. So you have Darren Rizzi come in and do all the stuff that he does, and you get a little bit healthier, and you go out there and win a couple of ball games. You beat your hated rival in Atlanta, and you think, okay, maybe this is a guy who's got a little bit of a plan here. And Derek Carr gets hurt, okay? Well, maybe you got a chance to look at another quarterback. And you look at Jake Haener, and he's atrocious for a half, and so you go back to Spencer Rattler, and he shows some signs of life, and he leads 4 straight scoring drives. And I'm sitting here as an analyst of this team, talking to you, the fan of the team, and I'm going, let's see if there's something you can build on. Yeah, let's talk about the young corners. Let's talk about the young tackles on offense. Let's talk about Brzee in the middle and some of the young players on the skills outside. Let's talk about a new quarterback potentially that could be that guy. Not will be, could be. Okay, you go to Green Bay and you get smoked. Okay, Green Bay's good. And it's cold up there, and they're in the middle of a playoff fight, and you know what? You just got your butt kicked by a good team. We know you're not a good team, but you get your butt kicked by a good team. So you come home and you figure you'll get the game against Las Vegas. and you get smoked by 2 scores. Smoked. And I want to talk about one aspect of that before we get to what's more important. That's the big picture, and it ties back into that Carolina loss just a little over a month ago. When Darren Rizzi punted the football down 15 points with under 4 minutes to go, I was sitting on my couch looking at the television going, that is disqualifying. That is quitting. And that is unacceptable. No one, and I mean no one, can explain to me how you can punt the ball down 2 scores, 2 touchdowns. Touchdown and a 2-point conversion and a touchdown and an extra point. There are 3.5 minutes to go in this game, and you are punting? I know that you're backed up against your own goal line and you just took a sack. I know that it's third and a lot. Do you want to win the game? Who cares if you don't get it? If you punt, you lose. If you turn it over on downs and they punch it in for a touchdown, you lose. Aren't we out here to try to win? Completely disqualifying and completely unacceptable by Darren Rizzi to make that decision. Disqualifying. Based on that decision alone, I would not give him an interview for the next head coach. I wouldn't have hired him anyway. I wouldn't give him an interview after that. That's quitting. But that's in the rearview mirror. No one cares about the Saints and the Raiders anymore. It's 20 hours in the rearview mirror. This season is lost. It's an embarrassing loss. Move on. And so after 4 minutes of this diatribe, I've moved on. But here's the deal. That loss against the Raiders at home in an empty Superdome should be as jarring to the higher-ups in the Saints organization as that loss at Carolina was that triggered the firing of Dennis Allen. Because you have to look at this. We've all done it for months, years, some of us. But you have to look at the state of this team and what has gone on this season and realize we got to do everything different. That means we're not retaining Darren Rizzi and this staff, and that means we are shifting the entire surface and focus of the organization. Everything. Because look at what you've got. You hired Dennis Allen. Did that work? No. You promoted Pete Carmichael with him. Did that work? No. You signed Derek Carr. Did that work? No. You kept doing the same salary cap strategy you've been doing for Drew Brees' entire career. Has that worked? No. Your roster's as bad as anybody in the NFL. And then you look at the draft. And you look at what they've done. And I've got the numbers right here. But in this past draft, you make your selections, and it's early. It's their first year. But I think you have hit on Fuaga as a tackle. Probably your left tackle, at the very least, a good starting tackle on one side in the NFL. Kool-Aid McKinstry, that didn't look great, but it's early. I got you. It hasn't looked great. Spencer Rattler, maybe he's a backup. We'll see. You got Bub Beans, you got hurt. Jalen Ford, no. Christian Boyd, no. Josiah Ziram, no. So you got one starter out of this class right now. And I realize McKinstry starting, he wouldn't be if they didn't have debilitating injuries. You only have one starter out of the 2023 class. It's Brzee. Foskey, no. Kendre Miller, forget about it. He got hurt again yesterday. I was listening to, it's a concussion. I'm not blaming the guy, but what am I supposed to say? He's never available. Nick Saldiveri's a reserve. Jake Hayner's a reserve. Jordan Howden's thrust into duty. He's not great. A.T. Perry, gone. So that's one. You got 2 guys that start out of your last 2 draft classes. Go back to 2022, better. Olave, good player, starter. You drafted Trevor Penning. He's out there. It hasn't been great the last month, but okay, I'll leave it as undecided. And Alontae Taylor, I think, is a pretty good player. It hasn't been great, and he's not an all-pro, and you've got guys that were better, but he's okay. And then you got DeMarco Jackson, Jordan Jackson, no. But so in the last 3 drafts, you've got 5 starters. You go back to 2021, Peyton Turner, whiff. Ian Book, whiff. Landon Young, whiff. Quan Baker, whiff. You do have Pete Werner, who's been a starter for you. You do have Paulson Adebo, who's a good player. But then you go back to the 2020 draft, and you only hit 1 starter there. You got Ruiz. Zach Bond's gone. Troutman's gone. Stevens is gone. That's 5 drafts. And you've gotten what I would consider to be 8 starting players. And really, Ruiz, probably Olave, Brzee, and Fuaga look to be high-level players. And Brzee's really just a pass rusher. So you didn't hire a good coach. You did a bad job promoting the offensive coordinator. You did a bad job evaluating the quarterback you needed to bring in. Your salary cap strategy stinks. You don't draft well. And I'm looking at some of these guys that I was hoping would progress and be good stories moving forward. Rattler, I'm putting an X next to. Kendre Miller, putting an X next to. Penning, I'm iffy on. Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry are getting beat pretty regularly. Now that Adebo and Lattimore are hurt, you probably got to try to bring Adebo back. You may have caught a break there if you're the Saints. I feel awful for the guy. It's a terrible injury, but if you're the Saints, you may catch a break and be able to get him on the cheap. And I think Fuaga's good. And the rest of and Werner's okay. Ruiz and McCoy are okay. But there's just not a lot good here. So you can't, in good conscience, as an organization.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Move forward doing almost anything you have done previously. Because it doesn't work. It's a failure. You've got an opportunity to turn the page. And I think most people who follow this organization would suggest the best thing to do would be not only to clean house on the staff, but to move out Dennis Lauscha and Mickey Loomis. But it's our understanding that's nowhere near happening. So you can't expect change there as far as personnel. You have to shift philosophy. You have to shift identity. And if a season where you lose as many games as you have since 2005 doesn't do it, maybe the jarring loss like Carolina to an awful team like the Raiders, and make no mistake, they're awful, will do that. The question is Mickey Loomis able to put his ego aside and realize, man, we screwed this up big time, and we cannot try to fix this over the next 6 months. You have to try to fix this over the next 18 months, over the next 30 months. Because it is broken with a capital B. And I don't know how else anyone would assess this and determine it. That's our opening drive, brought to you by Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every car on the lot, online at genesisbatonrouge.com. I think we'll have a little bit more to tell you about that when we come back. What are we going to do? I want to talk about LSU and Baylor. Oh, no. Let's talk college football playoff. Let's do that. We'll step aside. Back with more. It's next.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, you can find them at Gulf Coast Office Products. Shout out to our guy, Trey Beal. Awesome dude. Helps us out here at Guarantee Media with our printers, scanners, copiers, and he can do the same for you. Check him out online, GCOPnet.com. All right, college football playoff quarters crank up coming up tomorrow. You got the one game tomorrow and then a big-time triple header coming up on New Year's Day. I want to kind of talk about all of them here. Look at the numbers against the spread as well. Y'all kind of know where I stand on this, and you'll catch that theme as we move through these games. But I am excited to see how it plays out. I really am. So Penn State will play Boise. That'll be the game on New Year's Eve that will basically follow LSU and Baylor in the Texas Bowl. They'll play in the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State's an 11.5-point choice. Of course, Penn State the 6th seed. Boise State laughably the 3 seed. Penn State's third nationally in stuff rate. That means on runs that you stop at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. 27% of runs go for 0 or negative yards against Penn State. That's really, really good. Ashton Jeanty is very good also. His 3 worst games of the year, have averaged 134.5 yards per game. For perspective, his 3 worst games of the year, averaging 134 yards per game, that ranks 4th in the nation. His worst efforts are top 5 in the country. But I don't believe that Penn State's going to allow him to take this game over. It just feels like that would be, at the very least, implausible. I know that Genty ran for a ton of yards on Oregon. I got it. I know he's been great all year. But Penn State knows what Boise State wants to do. And I feel like if you want to, and you have Penn State athletes against Boise athletes, you can slow the run down. I'm not saying that Genty's going to go 27 carries for 17 yards. But I think they can hold him to 25 carries and 80 yards if they want to. Now, you have to make some sacrifices if you're going to do that. And the question is Maddox Madsen good enough to take advantage of some opportunities? Against Oregon early in the season, and that's really the only game that I want to point to because it's the only game where they played real football, he was 17 of 40 for 148 yards and a touchdown. He is a game manager in every sense of that word. He's thrown 22 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, doesn't make a lot of plays. It's just run the ball with Ashton Genty and make sure that we don't turn it over. And that game plan, in my opinion, is not going to work against Penn State. Everyone always talks about James Franklin's inability to win the big game. And this is what I said last week when Penn State was playing SMU. I said, worry about the opponent, not the spot. They lose to the opponent, not the spot. And this opponent, in my opinion, is not very good. And I think Penn State has a good football team. Am I going to pick them to beat Oregon? No. Am I going to pick them to beat Ohio State? No. Would I pick them to beat Texas? Not right now. But they have a good football team. And I think they will take Genty's big playmaking away. I don't think that Maddox Madsen is going to make enough plays. I realize that the score against SMU is probably a little bit lopsided because you can't just throw a pick six every third play and hope to stay in the game, SMU. But I like Penn State in this game, and I like them to win it by 2 scores. Might win it by 20, might win it by 17, might win it by 14, but I think it's right north of the number. Would I be shocked if Boise won the game? Yes, I would. This is the mountain that I'm going to stand on and yell until I get knocked off. I don't think Boise's any good. And I think if this game was played in September or October, everyone would be like, yeah, Penn State will win the game. But I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, well, now that there's a Fiesta Bowl logo on the field, I don't think Penn State can do it. They can beat Boise, and they will tomorrow. Let's go to the 3 games we'll play on New Year's Day. That's Texas and Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. Texas a 12.5-point choice in this game. Arizona State has reached this game as the 4 seed in the college football playoff because they beat Kansas State, BYU, and Iowa State. So that's impressive, or not. Texas is first in yards allowed per successful play. That's a stat from Bill Connolly's analytics piece. I don't exactly know what it means, but if you're first in the country in a defensive metric, I think that's pretty good. Now, keep in mind, I do want to mention that Texas hasn't exactly set the world on fire either. But I do think that Texas smothering A&M was good on A&M's home field. And I think that they have handled themselves pretty well against the Georgia program that I think is excellent. I get the quarterback injury, fully aware of it. Texas probably should have taken advantage of that, and they didn't. But that's a Texas defense with dudes on it. And I think Arizona State does not have the dudes. Now, Cam Scadaboo is a tackle-breaking machine. Watched him play. I know he can break tackles against Texas Tech. I got you. You're doing great against Iowa State. Can you break a bunch of tackles against Texas? I would tend to think no. Now, here's the equalizer. Here is the difference. Here is a storyline you have to watch. In the 2 losses to Georgia, Texas gave the ball away 7 times. Arizona State gives the ball away second fewest of all the quarterfinal teams that are left. If Texas is going to lose this game, if Arizona State is going to win this game, I don't believe it'll be because Cam Scadaboo ran for 185 and 3 scores, and Arizona State beat Texas 38-37. I believe that Texas will turn the ball over 3 times, and Arizona State will turn them into points. Is that conceivable? Yes. Is it going to happen? No. Texas will win this game comfortably because Texas has really good players, and Arizona State doesn't. That's the nature of this. That is what this sport is. I got fooled for the last time on TCU a couple of years ago. Well, I mean, it kind of beat Michigan. I mean, that's pretty good. They got a good quarterback. No. This year, even so, this year does not have one of those Alabama great teams, one of those Ohio State great teams, one of those great Georgia teams. It doesn't. And that should theoretically allow some of these lesser teams to compete, but I'm not biting on that bait. I'm not. Give me Texas by a couple scores. Ohio State and Oregon. Now, this is a real football game. This is real football. Ohio State's a 2.5-point choice here. In the first matchup, there were 7 lead changes in this game in Eugene. 7 lead changes. Both offenses were really good in their last time out. You saw Oregon just absolutely run it all over Penn State. Dylan Gabriel was great in that game. And Ohio State took it to a good Tennessee defense. Impressive. And that's what Ohio State can be. They're just not that all the time. Now, the Ohio State defense against Tennessee, this is a great stat. It's from Bill Connolly, and I'll give you another one here in a second. But Ohio State against Tennessee had 52 snaps pre-garbage time, so 52 consequential snaps. In those 52 snaps, Tennessee got 5 yards or more 13 times. They got 0 or less 16 times. So they more often went 0 or backwards than they did 5 yards on the consequential snaps in that game. Now, that can be Tennessee's offense. They can struggle, especially when you lose your star running back. Sampson goes out. It wasn't the same Tennessee team, but I don't think it would have mattered. This is a great, great synopsis of the last
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. And now I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun, Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
Matchup between Ohio State and Oregon. I'll just read it verbatim from Bill Connolly's piece because I think it's so good. I can't really add to it, but I think it's indicative of what you saw in that game. Oregon won the game by running the ball efficiently. Jordan James had 23 carries for 115 yards, and that prevented Ohio State from doing the same thing. The Buckeyes only had a 34.4% rushing success rate. That's well below their season average. And Oregon hit their deep shots, recovered a fumble, and they dramatically altered the field position battle in their favor. That's all the good news. Here's the bad news there for Oregon. With all that done well, they ran it efficiently. They didn't let Ohio State run it great. They hit 2 deep shots for touchdowns. They got a key turnover, and they dramatically shifted field position on their home field. They did all those things, and they won by 1 point. So I think it stands to reason that Oregon has to play excellently to beat Ohio State. Now, I would probably say the shoe is the same on the other foot, but I think Ohio State's got a little bit more talent than Oregon. And Will Howard was great against Tennessee. So this is a great, great game. I would probably lean Ohio State, and I'll admit that may have some 20-year bias baked into it. I don't have a strong feeling about the winner of this game, and the number's so short. I'll just take the team I'm comfortable with because I've seen them for so long. That's a flawed way to go about it, and there's a reason I won't lay a nickel on the game. But I'll take Ohio State to win that one. And then you got Notre Dame and Georgia right up the road in New Orleans. Georgia's a 1.5 favorite. They're returning here to the Dome to play Notre Dame for the first time since 1981 when they won the national championship with Herschel Walker. And we know that the real story in this game is no Carson Beck. Here's the deal with Gunnar Stockton. His last 13 dropbacks against Texas produced 15 total yards. So Texas eventually figured it out. Stockton has not completed a pass that traveled 16 yards in the air since he was in high school. Everything he's done since coming into a game against Georgia, and granted, much of that's in garbage time, has been around the line of scrimmage. So for Notre Dame, who has a good defense, their goal is going to be to play up tight and to tackle around the line of scrimmage. I don't think Georgia's going to try to stretch the field that much. Kirby Smart's going to try to win this game with his defense. Now, Riley Leonard has not been a dynamic quarterback for Notre Dame as far as making big plays through the air. He has thrown for less than 200 yards in 8 of their 13 games, and he has not thrown for more than 229 yards in a game all season. Notre Dame is a ball control running team, and part of that running is Riley Leonard. He's run for 751 yards and 15 touchdowns. but trying to play Georgia in a phone booth makes me very nervous if I'm Notre Dame. If I'm going to play Georgia, I want the field spread a little bit. I want to try to get out in a little bit of space. You let Georgia come in and into a box, that's scary. They don't have the Jalen Carters and some of the monsters they've had on the defensive front. And look, Ole Miss beat them up in a phone booth, but that makes me a little bit nervous. I lean Georgia here based on confidence in Kirby Smart and the amount of 4- and 5-star players they have on defense. Yes, petrified about Gunnar Stockton. And if you gave me Carson Beck in this game, I would lay 6.5, 7. I would lay 7 points with Georgia, with Carson Beck. With Stockton, the math changes pretty quickly. And what I would probably do is take the under 44.5 in this game if you made me. But I think the last 2 games here, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, are going to be excellent. And I'll be pleasantly surprised if the 2 games prior to that are. But I'll take the big brands. I'll take Penn State. I'll take Texas. I'll take Ohio State. I'll take Georgia. That's who I think ends up winning these things. And I'm really, really excited to watch these things. Taylor, is there one of these matchups over the other that has you more intrigued? I'm assuming you're going to say Rose Bowl, but you could throw me a curveball and say you want to watch Ashton Genty.
No, I'm going to go Notre Dame, Georgia.
Okay.
I think that's the one to me that I can't decide on, right? And when you look at it, the line has gone back and forth. It's Georgia the favorite, is Notre Dame the favorite. I'm with you. Like, if Carson Beck was playing in this game, I would pick Georgia, no problem. No Carson Beck, that concerns me a little bit with Notre Dame's physicality.
How many teams that are still left can win the national championship?
I think 4. I think it's weird. I don't know if Georgia can beat Notre Dame. I think Georgia can win. I don't think Notre Dame can.
Okay.
As weird as that is to say, I think Texas can win.
Is that a Riley Leonard concern or just an overall talent concern?
That's a Marcus Freeman concern for me.
That's fair.
I think Texas can win if they run the ball efficiently. And I think Oregon and Ohio State can both win. So those are my 4 teams that I think can win it.
Look, there are a lot of people that thought that we were good with the BCS. There are a lot of people thought we were good with 4. I mean, the next 2 days to me are going to be awesome. And I thought the environments in the home games were awesome, even though the outcomes weren't. And I've seen some good stuff on NFL playoffs last year. Like 5 of the first 6 games were decided by more than 14 points. And even if we have national semifinals, like we had, LSU beats the brakes off of Oklahoma and Alabama annihilates Michigan State, whoever it was. Like we've had. It's just part of it when there's really good football teams. Really good football teams beat people. I'm excited to watch just about all this. I'm out on my island that I just don't think Boise State or Arizona State are any good at all. But we'll see. I can be proven wrong, and that's the beauty of it. And guess what? Right or wrong, I'll be right back on the air on Thursday, and we'll talk about it. So that's the beauty of it. LSU can play a football game tomorrow against Baylor. Brian Kelly just met with the media and announced something that we hadn't necessarily confirmed on the offensive line. We'll talk about that coming up next.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Wilson Alexander is going to join us from Houston coming up in the second hour. We'll ring up Wilson. What time did I tell old Wilson? 2:15 is when we'll talk to him. So in about 50 minutes or 40 minutes from right now, we'll chat with him from Houston. Brian Kelly met with the media just moments ago, and one of the things that has been tweeted and reported is something that we talked about last week, that the offensive line is essentially set aside from right guard. So Tyree Adams is going to play left tackle, and then you're going to see Paul Mabenga at left guard and DJ Chester at center. And then Miles Frazier is going to kick out to right tackle. At right guard, you'll see Bo Bordelon some. You'll also see Cohen Eccles. Now, I don't know if that's because they want to get a look at both of those players or if Bordelon's got to kick out and play some tight end and put a different jersey number on. I don't know. But I had heard that was the indication. I talked about it in a segment that we did last week, and that is likely what you're going to see. This is the biggest question mark in this entire football game, because Baylor's only really got 2 opt-outs, and one of them is really impactful. It's their nickel, who's a good player. But they're pretty much whole from the team that's rattled off 6 wins in a row. LSU is not whole. And I think that LSU, with a veteran quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, can use Xavier Thomas and Aaron Anderson and Chris Hilton and Tradez Green to throw the football. Like, I think that's enough good athletes to go play wide receiver and tight end to throw the ball. What I don't know is if that offensive line I just laid out for you can block. Now, if they were playing Texas A&M or Alabama or Ole Miss or South Carolina, I would already know this thing is cooked. Baylor has not been very good on defense. And it's surprising to me. It's probably surprising to you because I just assume Dave Aranda can roll out of bed, pull out his 60 binders. I've seen his office, trust me, the one in Baton Rouge, and just put a good defense on the field. But that has not happened. They've gotten gashed a little bit at times this year. They've been middle of the pack in the Big 12 the majority of the season. Now, if Dave Aranda and this Baylor defensive front can whip LSU's reserve offensive line, and that's what this is, you got basically DJ Chester at center and everybody else is either new or moved. So if Baylor can wear out LSU's reserve offensive line, LSU's going to struggle. If LSU can protect Garrett Nussmeier and maybe open up some holes here and there, I think LSU can have some real success against Baylor, like a lot of teams this year have. What it feels like to me is, and we did this segment basically last week, but I just want to reiterate, a lot of people were traveling and whatnot last week if you got us locked in today. LSU's going to try to run the ball early in the game. That's easier for most offensive linemen and something they're more comfortable doing. And what LSU doesn't want to have happen is to get into a lot of third and longs because you've thrown 2 incompletions or you've taken a sack. And all of a sudden now Baylor can get creative with blitzes and confuse new offensive linemen and get after Garrett Nussmeier. That's the method for Baylor. So LSU has to find a way early in downs to win up front. Keep in mind.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play. Like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
LSU was number 1 in the SEC in third down conversions this year. Number 1. They were the best in the league. Why? Because nobody in the league was as good at pass protection as LSU, and LSU was very, very efficient at getting the ball out and picking up first downs. There was a large chunk of the year where LSU didn't stretch the field very well. It was really after the Ole Miss game where they stretched it great. And that's been a bugaboo for this offense, but the short passing game has not. But that's because you're so good at protecting the passer. And I still think, it's funny. This is funny. Whenever I'm talking, I realize I'm talking to a large group of people, and sometimes without knowing who you are, I can see your faces in cars driving around. And when I say LSU, it was great at protecting the passer, I can see a big portion of you rolling your eyes going, God, that offensive line was so overrated. This is so wrong. I promise you, they're not. I promise you, they're not. They were not good in run blocking, and they had never been good at run blocking in 2.5 years at LSU, and that didn't get a lot better. In pass pro, these guys were great. South Carolina has first-round picks on the edges. 2 sacks, that's it. Ole Miss, first-round picks. LSU dropped back to pass almost 60 times in that game. Garrett Nussmeier never got sacked. Texas A&M got dudes up front that are going to be high draft picks. Nick Scorton will go in the first round. They got to Nussmeier twice late in the game. In the first half, none. I didn't say they were perfect. They were very good. And that's what allowed LSU to be so good on third down. I can't, in good conscience, suggest that LSU in this game is going to be that efficient blocking up front and creating throwing lanes for Garrett Nussmeier. And oh, by the way, Kyron Lacey and Mason Taylor aren't going to be there for you. Neither is C.J. Daniels. So you have to make things easier on third down. You still got a good quarterback, a really good quarterback. But the most interesting piece to this game, without question, is how LSU's offensive line performs, especially on third downs. And the better position you put them in time over time over time will make them play better. And that comes from running the football. I'm not as concerned with LSU's defense as far as expectation goes. LSU's not going to put the clamps on Baylor. They're not. Sawyer Robinson's a good passer. He's a good player. He's very accurate. He doesn't run very much, but he's a good passer. They've got a couple running backs they'll get the football to that have had some success. And I expect Baylor to score somewhere in the neighborhood of 24 points. I'd be surprised if they scored 46. I'd be surprised if they scored 13. I think they're going to score somewhere in the mid-20s. Based on what they've been this year and based on what I expect LSU's defense to be. You really are getting basically LSU's starting defense, save a couple of guys. Sage Ryan won't be out there. Major Burns won't be out there. You're going to plug Toviano in. I think Deshaun Spears will play a little bit more. But you're basically getting the guys you've had. Shan's going to play. Pies is going to play. Savion Jones is going to play. Braden Swenson's going to play. Whit Weeks is going to play. Greg Penn will be out there. Zy Alexander's going to play. Ashton Stamps will be out there. Like, you've got the majority of what you've had on defense, and you're not preparing for anything new with Baylor because they got everybody on their offense. So I think based on statistics, based on what these groups have been, it's reasonable to project that Baylor will move the ball a little bit, that they'll score some points, that LSU will hold their own. And the variable in this game, in my opinion, comes down to, can LSU block a mediocre Baylor front? The answer is yes. You get yourself a pretty close football game. The answer is no. Garrett Nussmeier's running for his life, probably turns the ball over once or twice, and you probably lose a 27-17, 27-20 game. I think that's basically what you're looking at in the game tomorrow. We'll pick it. Coming up later, we'll have Wilson Alexander's thoughts on the game coming up a little bit later. Programming note for those that want to tune in to us tomorrow, you can catch Charles Handgriff and Matt Musso on Eagle 98.1 Game Day starting at 8:30 tomorrow morning. That's earlier than usual. It's a 2:30 kick. They're at 8:30. They're going to go for 4 hours on the pregame. They'll hand it off to me on the LSU Sports Radio Network. At 12:30, myself, Brandon Taylor, Marlon Favorite will be with you until 2. That's when we'll give it to Chris Blair, the voice of the Tigers, for the call from NRG Stadium. And then 30 minutes after it goes final, me, Brandon, and Marlon will be with you for an hour recapping the game and the season. No Eagle 98.1 post-game show here for Guarantee Media in Baton Rouge. They're going to do 4 hours pregame, and then everybody's going to go enjoy their New Year's Eves and probably watch some football. So, appreciate y'all for joining us for any and all of that, starting up at 8:30 tomorrow and wrapping up probably somewhere around 8 p.m. tomorrow for the Kinder's Texas Bowl. We'll preview it with Wilson Alexander coming up a half an hour from right now at 2:50. And when we come back, let's talk about something that's really fun and some fun that I've been having for a couple of years, and it continued on last night. Let's talk about it next.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Printing, scanning, copying needs, look no further than Gulf Coast Office Products. Wonderful company right here in South Louisiana. They've got all the resources that you need, $1 million of product right here in Baton Rouge. Plus, you're going to get phenomenal customer service. They're smaller than the big box stores who are just going to look at you as a line item. They're bigger than the mom and pop stores that may have great customer service but can't service everything that you need. Gulf Coast Office Products can do it, and they're happy to help you. So for all your printing, scanning, copying needs in 2025, be sure and contact my friends over at Gulf Coast Office Products, gcopnet.com. Okay, so there is no wrong way or right way to be a fan. Everyone kind of feels differently about sports. I know, like in my family, my dad and my uncle sit next to each other for LSU games. If LSU loses, my dad is miserable for a week. Just can't handle it. The Alabama game this year put him over the edge. My uncle just wants to come in, see the band play, eat a hot dog. He might leave at halftime. But they're both going to put on their LSU shirts, and they both got season tickets, and that's just the way they want to handle it. Neither one of those is right or wrong. I would suggest not breaking televisions or getting in fistfights in the parking lot because you're so mad about a loss. But hey, passion's a good thing, I think. And I will tell you that, well, I say neither of those is right or wrong. I'm right in the middle of that. I am intensely passionate about LSU and the Cubs. I'm mild-mannered in my quote-unquote takes about things, but it matters a lot to me if LSU wins or loses or the Cubs win or lose. And when those teams win, I'm elated. And when those teams lose, I'm devastated. That's just the way it goes. And that's the way I look at the proper balance for me to be a fan. You're never going to hear me go in the heat of battle. Now, the Texas Bowl doesn't count because I'm not going to get fired up for that. Sorry. But in the games that have championship-style expectations, you're never going to hear me go, they'll get them next time. Like, I'm going to get ticked about that. And I think that because I get so ticked about a loss, the win, it makes it a little bit sweeter to me. But I don't want to just celebrate wins and just dismiss losses. I don't think that's not the investment for me. I got to have it both ways. Got to feel bad one way, good the other. That's the way I'm wired with my teams. I've been pulling for LSU since about 1994. I've been pulling for the Cubs since about 1996. And I'm set in my ways. But something new has happened over the last 5 years. And I feel a little bit like I'm cheating. I'll be honest. I feel like I'm cheating. But it's just the way I feel. When I watched the Bengals reach the Super Bowl at Arrowhead 3 years ago, I was so pumped up. And when the Bengals got to the Super Bowl, I was so fired up. And then the Bengals lost the Super Bowl, and I was like, okay. LSU lost to Alabama in the national championship game. I'm just crestfallen. LSU loses to Florida in the College World Series final. I can't. I'm inconsolable. The Bengals lost that game, and I was like, dang. Would have been fun. And last night, Jaden leads Washington down the field and throws the game-winning touchdown pass in overtime. And I'm fist-pumping on my couch. Like, yeah, let's go. Fully realizing that if the Commanders lose in the playoffs, I'll be like, well, I feel like I'm cheating myself. I feel like I'm cheating the fandom. It's not the way I've done it my entire life.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.